busy bees. Today we're back with another chapter in our My Weird School series, Book 10, Mr. Docker is Off His Rocker by Dan Gutman. But before we get into our chapter of the day, we are going to get into our riddle of the day. And the riddle of the day is, the more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? And I'll tell it to you again. The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? And I will give you the answer to the riddle at the end of our chapter. So let's pop open the book and fly through this adventure together. Okay, so we finished off chapter 9 where they were spying on Mr. Docker and they were there, all was going well until Ryan dropped his really huge stink bomb. Everything smelled and everything started turning into dust. And then the craziest thing happened. The garage door opened and Mr. Docker was there with a knife and the children started screaming. So let's get into chapter 10. The Spudmobile. The crazy mad scientist, Mr. Docker, was 4 feet away and he was holding a big sharp knife. I looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at Michael. Michael looked at me. Andrea and Emily ran away. Are you going to swap out our brains? I asked Mr. Docker. What are you doing with that knife? Asked Ryan. I'm peeling potatoes, Mr. Docker said. What's that smell? I made a stink bomb, Ryan said. Excellent, said Mr. Docker. I'm glad you're doing science projects at home. Welcome to my laboratory. We looked around Mr. Docker's garage. It was filled with lots of test tubes, jars of chemicals, and other stuff. But the thing that stood out was his car. It didn't have a metal covering like a normal car. The whole thing was covered with potatoes. What's that? Michael asked. You're just in time, Mr. Docker said. I've been working on it for months, and it's finally done. Behold, the Spudmobile! The car was covered with rows and rows of potatoes. Each potato had wires attached to it that went to the engine. It was the weirdest looking car I ever saw. You built a car powered by potatoes? Ryan asked. It can also run on pickles, Mr. Doctor replied. But I thought a picklemobile would sound silly. Do you want to ride? Sure, we said as we climbed in. It has that new potato car smell, said Michael. What kind of mileage does this thing get? Asked Ryan. Who knows a lot about cars? About 5 miles per potato, said Mr. Docker. He turned the key. The engine started, up with a quiet hum. Mr. Docker pulled out of the driveway. It really worked. Maybe someday all cars will run on potatoes, Mr. Docker said. They won't have gas stations anymore. They'll have potato stations. And if you're out driving and you get hungry, I said, you can eat your car. The possibilities are endless, said Mr. Docker. We could heat our houses with potatoes. Someday we'll have potato-powered computers and TV sets. They could have potato-powered toys, I suggested. Potatoes not included. Mr. Docker let out one of his cackling laughs. That's when I realized that he's not an evil mad scientist at all. Mr. Docker is the coolest nerd in the history of the world. We turned the corner and there were Andrea and Emily on the sidewalk. Oh my God. They were staring at the potato car with their mouths wide open, like they were looking at a ghost. Check it out, Ryan shouted out the window. We're riding in the Spudmobile. Power to the potato, shouted Michael. Nah, 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 boo-boo on you, I shouted. And that is the end of our chapter for today. Oh my gosh, I'm glad the chapter turned around, right? It started off kind of scary. We were kind of scared from the last time, but it turned around and we learned that Mr. Docker is very smart in what he does. And that's pretty awesome that he was able to power up a car using potatoes. Okay, so let's get into the answer to our riddle of the day. So our riddle of the day was, the more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? And the answer is, drum roll please, Footsteps. Footsteps. The more you take, so the more footsteps you take, the more you leave behind. Because if you look behind you, all you're going to see is footsteps. If you like this video, give it a like. And if you'd like to follow along for more adventures, hit that subscribe button. And I will see you on the next one.